Welcome, everyone. My name is Julie Paul, and I would like to just take a minute to introduce myself. I'm currently working on my PhD in the early childhood education field with a focus on working with students who are emergent bilinguals. As an ESL teacher, I became aware and cognizant of the fact that many of our students who spoke a language other than English at home had needs that were not being met in the classroom. So many of the students had so much to bring into the classroom that and it was just going unnoticed by many of the teachers and their peers. So I do hope that these few sessions provide some resources and some insight into meeting the needs of our students who are emergent bilinguals. Prepared guiding questions for our sessions. Today we're going to look at who are our English language learners and how can we better meet their needs in the classroom. And I'm going to provide a little bit of background on second language acquisition because I feel like that's very critical to really understanding our students and better meeting their needs. And next, we're going to look at adapting lessons for emergent bilingual students and what does assessment with emergent bilingual students look like. And then finally, we're going to conclude with working with families of emergent bilingual students and in the classroom and outside of the classroom. So we've all probably heard the term English language learners, and that is going to be used in the K through 12 school settings to refer to students who have already developed their home language and are learning English as an additional language. However, many in the early childhood education field feel like this term is not accurate to describe children under age 6 who are still developing their first language. So after the passing of ESSA in December 2015, the term dual language learners is now referring to children from birth to 8 years old who are learning English while still in the process of learning their home language. Other terms that I did want to point out are ELs, English learners, LOT, children who speak a language other than English, or emergent bilinguals. And I use the term emergent bilinguals, you'll hear it in this presentation, because it follows an asset-based model. According to Ophelia Garcia, these students are acquiring English as they simultaneously function in their home language and become bilingual. So this views bilingualism as an asset rather than a deficit. Research does state that students must develop their languages simultaneously in order to transfer skills and removing their home language from their linguistic repertoire. So you want to focus on building the languages simultaneously rather than putting all of the focus on acquiring English. I think it's extremely important for us in the ESL field to become familiar with the other terminology that is used, and you will see that not all of these terms follow an asset-based model. NEP, not English proficient students, LEP, limited English proficient, ELL, EL, CLD, culturally and linguistically diverse, DLL we mentioned, EB we mentioned, ELP, English language proficiency, so this is referring to their level of proficiency of English. ESL, you're familiar with, ESOL, English to speakers of other languages, and then TESOL, teachers of English to speakers of other languages. Okay, so now it's time for us to participate in a little activity to see how much we know or what we're going to learn about our students who are emergent bilinguals. So this is an activity you can use with your students. If Dr. Kirsch or someone would be able to pass out blank flashcards to everyone, you're going to fold it in half. And on one side, you're going to write myth. And then on the other side, you're going to write reality. You can also use this for true and false or yes and no, depending on the level of your students or the needs of your class. So these are called choice cards. When you hear the statement, you're just going to raise your choice card to face the front of the room or your teacher if she's at the front. But this is allowing students to have a voice even if they don't feel comfortable yet expressing themselves. So this is a great activity for some of your emergent bilingual students and all of your students. Again, these strategies that you're going to learn about not only help your emergent bilinguals, but they meet the needs of all of your students and help all of your students. Okay, so I'm going to read one of the statements and you're going to show if it is a myth, if that is false, or if this is a reality, this is true about our emergent bilinguals. So the first statement, learning 2 languages during the early childhood years will overwhelm, confuse, and or delay an English learner's acquisition of English. So think about that. So take a minute and make your selection. Is it a myth or a reality? Hold up your card. You can look around the room, and if you answered that this was a myth, you are correct. Infants have the innate ability to learn 2 languages from birth, and they have the innate capacity to learn 2 languages from birth. So if it is sufficient in quantity and quality, children can become fully proficient in more than 1 language. And research shows significant advantages to children that are bilingual or know more than 1 language. So that was a myth. Number 2, the bilingual brain processes language in ways that are different from the monolingual brain. Is that a myth or reality? Okay, that is reality. That is true. The bilingual brain processes languages in ways that are different from the monolingual brain. When children learn more than 1 language, their experiences in each language alter the neural patterns and language process systems in the developing brain. So during the first year of life, an infant is able to perceive and process sounds of all spoken languages. And then sometime between 8 and 10 months, this speech perception really starts to narrow. And by the end of the first year of life, infants have lost some of their ability to discriminate between sounds. So this is why after 7 years of age, the human capacity to hear and process unfamiliar sounds drastically decreases. Therefore, this is why pre-K through 3rd grade are the prime years for children to learn a second language. We're not saying that they cannot learn it after those years, but those are the ideal and prime years to learn an additional language. Number 3, bilingual children often have smaller vocabularies in each of their languages than monolingual children. Do you think this is a myth or reality? Okay, so this is a reality. There are cognitive demands of processing 2 languages. So this may lead to slower word retrieval in each language, but enhanced abilities in other areas. Like I said, there are unique linguistic challenges faced by young emergent bilingual learners, and they have different sets of skills compared to in comparison to our monolingual children. So we've got to keep that in mind in the classroom. Okay, and our last one, as young emergent bilinguals learners start to speak more English, they will naturally lose their home language abilities, and this is nothing to worry about. So what do you think? This is a myth or reality? So if you selected that this was a myth, you are correct. Young children can learn nursery rhymes, songs, and extend their vocabulary and literacy skills in English and their home language with adult support. Dual language learners or emergent bilingual students who receive these opportunities in their home language consistently outperform those students who attend English-only programs. So by working on their skills in both languages, they're able to have higher academic achievement in English in their future. So these opportunities must be provided by the family members and the teacher to encourage the emergent bilingual student to build both languages simultaneously. So we will talk a little bit more about that when we get to our last session on family engagement and what that looks like in working with families of emergent bilingual students. This is just a review and a way for you to check your answer. These are myths that are dispelled by another scholar, Linda Espinosa, and I am going to provide the article for you to read after our first session. Just got about a couple more minutes, and I want to touch on second language acquisition. Our first theorist is Stephen Krashen, and he has 5 hypotheses that are some of the foundation elements of second language acquisition. He talks about the affective filter, input hypothesis, natural order, acquisition learning, and monitor. And for today's purposes, we're just going to talk about 2 of these. However, I do encourage you to further research and look at the additional 3. So Dr. Krashen mentioned keeping learning active through movement, interactive activities, and how critical it is to use multiple groupings. So the students must be able to use their language and apply it, see it, hear it, be surrounded by language. And he talked about how it is best to incorporate new information when the input the student receives is one step beyond his or her current stage of competency. So that's what this states here, I plus 1. I is the input at students' current stage of language proficiency, and then the plus 1 is just beyond where they are currently. So that is great in multiple group settings when you have various levels of English proficiency with your students. And this is also to be used when you're selecting your texts. So I would go ahead and make sure that your text or materials are not overly cluttered or dense. And this goes into talking about comprehensible input. That's really the foundation of what this hypothesis is talking about. When you are talking to your students, make sure to slow your speech down and speak clearly and slowly. The best thing about it is about comprehensible input is using short sentences and simple sentences. So it's very